Aloha, and that brings you my greetings of love. When I spoke to you before, I was bringing you the thought of your responsibility of bringing love and peace into your home, into your classroom. And do you remember that I said that if you would memorize that wonderful quotation of the Masters, "My peace I give unto you," that wherever you went, you would be bringing my peace, God's peace, to those whom you met. You would be bringing peace and love into your home, into your classroom, onto your playground. And I said that because peace and love were the same thing, and because love was in both of the great commandments, that it was Christian. You remember those commandments? Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might, and love thy neighbor as thyself. Now, I want to take you a little bit further along that road of love and show you that in carrying God's message of love, you are not only being a student of the infinite way, you are not only being a good Christian, you are being a good child of God in any religion, in any country, and among those of all colors. Because right here I'm going to remind you that in the Old Hebrew Testament you will find those same two commandments. The Hebrews of old, in the book of Exodus, in the 10 Commandments given to Moses, learned that the first commandment is to love God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And in the book of Leviticus, in that same Old Hebrew Testament, you find the statement, love thy neighbor as thyself. And so you see that these teachings, which are teachings of the infinite way, and are teachings of the Christian faith, are also teachings of the Hebrew faith. So really, we are all one in our understanding and in our love of God and of each other. Someday perhaps I will take you into some of the Bibles of the world, of the other world, of Asia and Africa and India, and show you that love, both the love of God and the love of your neighbor, is a teaching older than time itself, and is a teaching that has been embraced by every religion, by every race, by every color of people on earth. And of course, when we know this, this makes it so much simpler to love our neighbor, not only our neighbor who lives next door or in the same town, but our neighbor who lives in Asia, in Africa, in India, in Canada, in the United States, in Mexico, in South America. These are all our neighbors, since in the Christian teaching, in the Hebrew teaching, and in the teaching of all people, you will find, first, love God, next, love your neighbor as yourself. Now, in the Ten Commandments, you will find one of them that says, honor thy father and thy mother. And do you know something? So many people misunderstand that commandment, and too many ignore it. It means something more than it says. How do you honor your father and your mother? Now let us be very honest between ourselves, children. We are not going to go very far in being blessed by God if we are not obeying the commands and demands that God makes upon us. I have brought this out to you before, that while the responsibility is God's to bring its love to us, the responsibility is upon us to bring that love of God to those about us. And so, we have this command, honor thy father and thy mother. Do you mind if I help you to obey that command in a very beautiful and simple way? When you get good grades at school, you are honoring your mother and your father. You are not only being a credit to them, but you are showing forth to the world their care, their teaching, their discipline of you, so that whatever honor you receive, they receive by reflection. If you receive any sign of distinction, a medal, a gold star, an A on your report card, it isn't you alone who are honored, since, please remember this, you didn't do it all by yourself. Your parents helped you earn the honor, the standing, the high mark, the distinction. Without them, you would not have achieved it any more than you would have achieved it without the help of God. And so, with every honor that comes to you, acknowledge God as your partner. Acknowledge that without God, you could not have done it. And also remember to acknowledge the part that your parents played in your honor. But whether or not you acknowledge it, the world does, because the world knows that you would have no achievements for which to be honored, but for the care, the blessing, the protection in your home. In the same way, if you become known as an obedient child, a good scholar, a good student, if you become known as kind, as generous in sharing, do not imagine for a moment that you receive all of the glory. Your parents share in that glory by reflection. every bit of good that the world thinks of you reflects a credit back upon your parents. And so, if you do nothing more than achieve good marks in school, or if you do nothing more than achieve a reputation for being kind or good or generous, you are honoring your mother and your father. Whenever you get into trouble, in a measure, you are disgracing your mother and your father, because it is a reflection upon their care of you or their discipline of you. So never think for a moment that being a spoiled child or a bad child, that you have nothing to think of but yourself. Think of whether or not you are honoring or dishonoring your father and mother. Now there is a spiritual reason for this. Since God is your real mother and your real father, remember that your mother and father are their direct representatives in your life. They bring to you the care, protection, discipline of God. And therefore, in honoring God, you are honoring your parents. In honoring your parents, you are honoring God. And so you see that being a good child or a bad child, or being a child who regularly gets good marks or regularly gets poor marks, is not merely something to do with you and your welfare. It has to do with honoring or dishonoring your mother and your father. That's a pretty grave responsibility for young children to remember, isn't it? But it is a responsibility. So now, when you remember the commandment, honor thy father and thy mother, remember at the same time the two great commandments about love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and love thy neighbor as thyself. Because these three commandments really go together. You would never honor God or love the Lord thy God except in the love that you give to your parents. You would never be loving your God except in the love that you exhibit to your neighbors, to your schoolmates, to your teachers. And in loving God and in loving your neighbor, you are automatically honoring your father and your mother. Well, isn't it wonderful how the theme of love, peace, obedience, honor, all go together? So here is another aloha, which is, my love is with you in parting.